So my tap room is Colorado only. Colorado wine and my cider. I have 16 taps, 54 bottles. We have 28 red Colorado wines, 16 whites. It's a massive portfolio of things.
Yeah.
And it's just everything that I love.
Hello, my name is Ria Wincaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world.
Hip, hip, hooray!
Bringing us into episode 457 of Cider Chat was Kari Williams of Capped Cider, which is based in Cedar Ridge, Colorado. And dang, do they have a bounty of ciders or not in their newly opened tasting room on top of what is called the Grand Mesa. And that is a spectacular region of the world. I have had the privilege of driving over the Grand Mesa from Grand Junction in Utah and heading over into Hotchkiss and Paonia. And I was absolutely floored. It's just a beautiful area. You could go camping. There's parks. And, of course, there are orchards. And it's the Williams family's legacy that we're going to be hearing a bit about, being one of the largest fruit producers in the state of Colorado. And also, what's going on with Capped Cider that Kari has really spearheaded. So it's a super interesting story because it's about 5 generations. I guess the 6th generation is on their way or already here. Not sure, but you get the picture, right? This is a multi-generational family that has been doing orchard care for a long time, primarily in culinary apples, not necessarily cider. But then along came Kari with a little eye on the prize, thinking, let's do this, and do this. Indeed they are. So we'll be catching up with her in just a wee bit. She's our featured guest on this week's episode. But first, as always, we have a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville. If this is your first time checking out Cider Chat, welcome. We have a full complement of episodes in the podcast archives with makers and orchardists and cider enthusiasts from all over the globe. All you need to do is put your little search in at the search bar on top. Let's say you're going somewhere into New York State. We've done many, many episodes coming out of New York State, California, Oregon, really, Florida, all over the globe. That's just for the U.S., up in Canada, down in Latin America, going over into Asia, Europe. Yeah, everywhere. Even Russia. Amazing, amazing conversation with Russian cider makers there. So if this is your first time, you are in the right spot. If you love cider, you want to learn more about it. If you have a certain affinity to growing apples, you want to learn about it. We have all that available for you. Check it all out at ciderchat.com. Right now, in my special spot of Ciderville, we are heading into blossom time. Down in the lower elevations, we're seeing all the ornamental trees. Up where I am, the apple trees and pear trees are still holding steady, just starting to leaf out. But that's going to be changing the next couple days because May brings it on. So I want to just share quickly a couple events with all of you that are coming up on the weekend of May 10th and 11th. If you're over in the UK, you want to check out Broom Farm, which is a location where Raw Cider and Perry is, and they have their annual Charity Blossom Day, and that's on May 10th. You also have the yew tree right there, which has a bevy of ciders on tap. So check them out. That's on May 10th. That's a Saturday. The next day, come on over to Portland, Maine, and attend Cider Feast. That's hosted by Jimmy Carbone, who is a longtime entrepreneur. For those who made it to New York City to be able to check out Jimmy's number 43, that was like a subterranean bar in East Village that Jimmy Carbone ran. He was such a wonderful publican, and he continues in that vein by hosting these different citywide events called Cider Feast. It's essentially a cider tasting, and there's a nice load of cider makers attending, primarily all from New England. So check it out. There's going to be links in the show notes to both of those events. And, of course, this weekend is a wassail event at Stone Ridge Orchards. That's in the Hudson River Valley on the west side of the Hudson River. And I suspect that there are some events in your special spot of Ciderville, too. Start checking out the orchards. This is the time of year where you want to be doing a little bit of traveling about to see the orchards in bloom. Shoot, I could just drive up to Vermont, just on the lower south end of Vermont, into a certain area outside of Bennington, and it's just like orchards galore. It's absolutely stunning. Pack a little lunch, have a little bit of cider, and just get in the groove where there are more blossoms than people. That is a good frequency to get into, believe me. I'll be talking more about that when I talk to Sophie from the Netherlands when we get to that episode. But boy, going to Keukenhof Gardens this time of year, which is a tulip garden in the Netherlands, it will blow your mind. So I'm all here for Blossom Time. I know you are too. If you have an event, share it this way. Maybe we'll be able to mention it on Cider Chat. Big tip of the glass to the following brands who help keep this podcast on the air and are part of the Cider Going Up campaign at the Cider Chat Patreon page. We have Ross-on-Wye Cider and Perry Company based in Ross-on-Wye in the United Kingdom, Duck Chicken based in South London, Spacetime Meat and Cider Works based in Dunmore, Pennsylvania, Insider Japan, Japan's first and only bilingual magazine, Esoterra Cider Works in Durango, Colorado, Taddy Bogle Cider Works in Acme, Pennsylvania, Bent Ladder Cider and Wine in Doylestown, Ohio, Press and Press, a family-driven online hub from Seattle, Washington, American Cider Association, an organization of cider and perry producers in the United States, Oliver Cider and Perry, based in Oakapitcher, which is in the West Country of England, and Locust Grove Cider and Brewery, based in Milton, New York, and Heeman's Cellar, based in London, Ontario. You too can become a patron of this here podcast by going to the Cider Chat Patreon page. Just search for Cider Chat and Patreon. That's spelled Patreon.
Walking through the orchards.
Up next is our featured conversation with Kari Williams of Capped Cider. In this chat, you're going to be hearing about the history of the Williams family in Cedar Ridge growing apples, because we're talking about 5 generations going forward to 6 now, I think, too. And growing apples in an elevation between 6,000 to 7,000 feet. In fact, there's going to be a piece here where she's going to be talking about being frost warriors, which is just a lovely phrase, on all the things that they have to do to make sure that they don't lose their whole crop during an early frost. And when I was just about ready to release this episode, I heard from Kari that they just went through a major battle with the frost, and it was all hands on deck. So you'll get a sense this time of year in the late spring is when things can really change for orchards, not only in Colorado, but all over the map. And it sounds good so far that they're hanging in there. And wow, wait till you hear all the different systems they have in place for battling the frost. Really, really something. You're also going to hear about their cider making that goes on there and how they went from growing culinary apples to adding on a block of about 100 acres of cider varieties. And most recently, they opened a tasting room in Cedar Ridge. So be able to, as you're cruising through that region, stop in and try one of their 16 different ciders on tap and 54 distinct bottles of cider, from single varieties like Kingston Black and Harrison to different blends that are featured in their Elevation series. Making this a very fine time now to grab a glass and join this chat with Kari Williams of Capped Cider, based in Cedar Ridge, Colorado.
We are located at the base of the Grand Mesa. The Grand Mesa is the largest flat-top mountain in the world, and it's a magical place. We're not far out of Grand Junction, centrally located, 80 miles southwest of Aspen.
The largest flat-top mountain in the world. I didn't know that. And The whole idea of being a flat top mountain is kind of interesting, isn't it? As a concept.
It is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
It's just the most beautiful place. Obviously, it's a volcano. And with that is some really interesting things as we talk about terroir. But just 300 lakes.
300 lakes.
Yeah,
wow.
up above me. They're within
High
15,
desert.
20 minutes. Yeah, it's of my house, basically, where I live in one of the orchards.
Yeah.
My family's been there 112 years,
Wow.
5 generations, soon to be 6. My husband and I have some grandsons coming up, and so they will be the 6th generation fruit growers
Wow.
in our family.
My goodness, that is quite a legacy. I was really excited about this conversation because I love that particular area of the world. And having driven up through Cedar Ridge before I was really doing this, otherwise I would have stopped and knocked on your door, of course, because you were definitely there.
Yes, and I'm sure you've seen all the orchards as you went through.
You see the orchards, the windy roads going up, and then you feel like you're on top of the world.
Yeah. You can see the San Juans from up there. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. In the day, the Surface Creek Valley in the 70s had orchards of 1,000 acres in size in its day.
1,000 acres.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big orchard in,
That
in
is.
70s,
Wow.
rivaling Washington in its day. It's been such a fruit belt, and we're the last generational family there at that elevation, and now the largest apple producers in the state of Colorado.
Your family? Mm-hmm. No kidding. Wow. Well, congratulations for that.
Yeah, we've just kept it going.
Let's go back to that point there and talking a little bit about your journey coming here and your family. Because I think listeners out there in Ciderville would be really curious about that. That is a territory that is probably really rugged and has a certain kind of soil. So how did this all happen?
My family grow, they market, they pack fruit in our own packing company and ship fruit in our own trucks, so they're completely integrated into apple sales. Not once in over 100 years have my family sold an apple at a farmer's market. It's a very interesting way that I got interested in cider. Because, I'm the farmer's wife. I'm watching my kids grow fruit and my sons grow into the orchards and our daughters. At first, I wasn't involved in the cidery. We make wine, we grow wine grapes, and don't market them as a big alcohol company or anything. We just love wine, travel and drink wine. And, we were making wine, and one day, this is where it all started. One day, my husband and I brought home a little package of cider and gave it to our father-in-law for his birthday, for a barbecue we were having. Isn't this cute? Look at this. How cute this is. And we had it, and we were like, this is not good. We didn't care for what we had tried. And so they were like, well, why aren't we making cider? We're a family of business entrepreneurs. We grow in Colorado, and we also grow in Texas. We're also fruit growers in Texas and winemakers, and we have vineyards there. But Colorado's our primary thing for our whole family. And so my husband and I experimented with some cider, and we were kind of messing around. We've always made wine kind of as, we call it our day off hobby. Like, that's what we do in our free time, is make something out of something we've grown. And we started messing around with cider, and I began drinking very high-end cider, trying it. I drank French cider and English cider and Spanish cidres, and that's what we started making, because that's what we associated fine cider with. And, back then, we started growing some cider apples because of being fruit growers. This could be a thing. 10, 15, well, it was like 15 years ago.
I was wondering,
now.
yeah, okay.
And
2010.
Yeah, it was, right in there. And it was like, well, we have some space here, some space there. And my father-in-law was like, well, all right, fine. We'll do that. It could be a thing. And if not, we're going to rip them out and replant for yield anyway. It's no big deal. So we had cider apples growing. We weren't even using and didn't even really, no one really paid much attention to it. And we took care of them. And I started drinking all this fine cider and love wine drinker, wine connoisseur. And we also owned a restaurant that I managed. So we're very into food. So I, unbeknownst, had the flavor thing already there. I had the palate for it. I wasn't fermenting. We were in 750 bottles making Spanish-style cidres out of heirlooms and, culinary apples. My family are commercial fruit growers. We grow culinary apples. We had a wine license with my family, and soon I kind of started becoming more curious and wanting to do it, and I was managing one of our other businesses and kind of becoming more and more interested in cider, and I decided I wanted to take it over and licensed it by itself and pulled it off the wine license so I could experiment. And I was in 750 bottles and couldn't sell them, obviously, and had no market for it. And my mother-in-law has a 100-year-old packing building in the middle of our little hometown. It's called the Apple Shed. She's an artist, and she has all this space, and so we started to sell a little bit of the bottles in there and introduce it to little old Cedar Ridge so that my husband and I could afford to buy more bottles to do it, because obviously, you know, the family was like, this is an expensive hobby and you need to either turn this into a business or you don't. No one wanted to do it, and so I took it over. And, you know, it never was really meant to be a business. As I got into it more and more, I stopped working for the family businesses and I started working full-time in cider, because I realized that I had to figure out how to sell enough cider to do the things that I wanted to, and that was experiment with cider apples and do 200 carboy trials a year and figure out how to blend and understand all of this cider fruit. And I began planting more cider fruit. I'm asking my husband and father-in-law, can I plant a little Roic? There's a spot here for some Kingston Blacks. And of course they were like, no. You know, they don't make money. They're not going to, you know, they did not want it. I eventually did. And
but with 1,000 acres, come on, guys.
Yeah. I mean, you got space here.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just sort of evolved, and it's really weird. I just tell people that my husband thinks I'm absolutely crazy, but the apples are kind of leading me. And I'm so entranced by it, I moved into our packing building. Snuck in the back corner and started making cider in this little tiny corner, not really welcomed, not paying rent, doing my own thing. I got my own fruit cooler. We have fruit coolers.
Okay.
You know, what a better place to be than where I'm at. One, I have every culinary apple there is, and they're free to me.
Yeah.
Two, I have all the heirlooms, and I have pears, and I have peaches, and I have all these things. So I have an endless supply of fruit, and I can be in a state cidery and represent my family in a way that really is aligned with what they've done and how they work and what our heritage is. And away I've went on this journey with cider. And the really beautiful part about it is I've had the luxury of time. I don't have to be in a hurry about it. Mm-hmm. If I want to take 3 years to study and develop a certain varietal, and it takes me a while to put it in the bottle, it's okay. I'm not in a hurry. I can age something 3 years before I put it out if I want to. That's a really great thing.
Yeah, I would say so. The fact that your family's involved in vineyards and make wine, were you tapping into that system there in terms of your style for making cider?
Yes, for sure. I had the basics from winemaking.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's just adjusting your palate and understanding how to use the fruit. And that's kind of what's taken me the time. And so I do make a lot of different styles of cider. I use all of the excess peaches that they don't sell to commercial grocery. We have a lot of peach culls. I bought a dump truck and I haul all the culls to the farmers around in our area for free and dump them to their pigs. I would never not make a peach cider because we grow a lot of peaches too and things like that. Honeycrisp. It's obvious I'm going to make a Honeycrisp cider. We are very big volume, very high quality Honeycrisp growers due to our elevation, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But the quality of fruit that I'm working with is absolutely unsurpassed. The terroir that I am sitting in the middle of cannot be replicated anywhere in the world.
Well, tell me about the soil. What do we have?
So the soil is volcanic soil, obviously, and we do have to make some amendments, but it's such a magical thing because together with some of the factors in the terroir, we have direct snowmelt water from the Grand Mesa. My family spent 65 years piping it to our properties in the Cedar Ridge area. It is gravity-fed, no fossil fuel, no water treatment stops, and then we micronize it to the trees. As I became interested in cider, I started understanding that the reason why my family is still selling a Honeycrisp apple. They're in a niche market, trucking fruit out of that valley, because you can't make a living on fruit if you can't sell it somewhere. And they've done that in a niche market environment because of this conditions and the terroir and the quality of fruit we are able to grow.
Right.
So they're very well known for high intensity flavor in fruit. And the reason why is the terroir. And I just simply tasted all these things, from other cider makers that I admire so much, and thought, I wonder if I could take the terroir and the growing techniques my family have used over a century to grow at this elevation, and I can apply that to cider apples, and what will happen when I get the flavor, that hyper-expressive flavor profiles from other things. And when I make a Honeycrisp cider, I don't have to do anything to it because it's amazing. Our fruit comes in with very high sugar content, very high acid. It's a different piece of fruit to start with. So in the beginning, I got away with being a fairly decent cider maker and not really knowing that much about it because I had absolutely fabulous products. I have the good stuff.
The good fruit, right?
So why wouldn't I make cider?
Yeah.
So as the cider fruit has come on, I've trialed and spent time moving things to different locations and different elevations, and become literally obsessed with how I can, what flavor profile, what responds at different elevations. For example, Blanc Malais. Blanc Malais I have on super spindle, and it's producing 70 bins per acre. That's incredible. When the big freeze came to Colorado some years back, I'm sure you're familiar with that, the state lost 30% of its fruit because October 20th we had just a really spontaneous cold snap that went from 70 degrees to 0, basically. And the trees died at the roots. They were full of sap. It froze everything, killed it to the root. 16 feet away, where we've pulled out whole blocks of fruit, I've got Blanc Malais just happy as
chilling away.
Wow. just pulling bin after bin out of there.
No kidding.
But it also has to do with our bloom time, because of where we are.
So let's first get the elevation.
So on the slope of the Grand Mesa where we are, and we grow throughout the county in different locations due to frost protection. We are 6,130 to 7,000 feet, our orchards range. So some of the highest elevations orchards in the world.
And what is the growing season then?
The growing season is shorter than anywhere else.
I would figure,
For example, you should not be able to grow a Fuji where we live. They're 180 day from bloom to maturity. We grow Fuji in 140 days. We're in a very high risk, high reward environment with fruit growing. It's very high risk. You don't have people rushing to the Surface Creek Valley today to plant orchards. And it is because they're very hard to establish. There's a lack of land, a serious lack of water in Colorado.
Sure.
And it's so risky. You wouldn't plant a large volume yield orchard for profit there because it's such a risk. So we are exposed to spring frost clear until Mother's Day some years.
So your bloom time is
very short. It depends on the varietal, but it's very short. But what happens in that shorter growing period is just an amazing thing in that elevation. A lot of people say that elevation growing has to do with warm days, cool nights, blah, 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 blah. Really, the number one driving factor is the UV exposure.
High desert sun.
Yeah, it is the levels of UV light that is producing that high-quality fruit throughout that short growing period.
Interesting,
And so the exposure to the UV is the big driving factor, but it is also the weather. So we have, on a global scale, we're not really considered hot or warm. We barely break 90 most summers. We're 80 to 90 degree area. We have warm summers, but we're not extremely hot when we get to that part of the season. And we cool off when it is hot so well in the evenings that the plant is absorbing all of that extra UV light, and it's doing most of its uptake and nutrient storage and delivery into the plant, recuperating at night. So our trees spend more time in recovery than they do in the distress that they're getting from the sun. And so that extra sunlight exposure is speeding everything up. And along with that, I'm getting tannin tannin. And I'm getting acid, and I'm getting really nice sugar content. And so growing maybe, a Kingston Black in my area or certain varietals, it's expressive. It's different. The fruit that comes in from that exposure is extraordinary. The flavor profile is different. Matter of fact, I will go other places and taste some of their fruit, and I'm like, I don't almost recognize some of the varietals sometimes because it is so different from my terroir to sea level. It's
I love
crazy.
hearing that. It's important for people to know that too, because a particular apple could taste
completely different. Years back, talking about terroir and cider was like talking to a wall, but it's very labor intensive to grow where we grow. We are pruning completely through the winter, all winter long, to make bud. One, we're a big orchard, we're in different areas.
Yeah. What size trees?
So we have all sizes. We grow on spindle, super spindle, and we have traditional plantings as well. And today have my own cider fruit orchards of about 100 acres of my own Capped Cider orchards now. Because I kind of was like, all right, fine, then I'm not going to bug you about all these. I have as much planted as they'll let me everywhere, and all of that is producing in different locations. And then, so I have my own fruit, and now I'm a little grower.
Good for you. And thank you for championing the apple in the glass. Yeah, I love it. So you have the terroir. You have this history in your family with winemaking and also apples, obviously. Let's talk about your cider making styles. Like, what have you embraced after all these different test batches?
I make so many different styles of ciders right now for my size of, distribution. I have 16 things in cans.
12 of which different cans.
Yeah,
wow.
12 of which are in my main distribution line, my main lineup, and they kind of pull the wheel along. But I have 54 bottles of Cajun cork and capped cider in my tap room. I've experienced
all of Snowcap. Can we repeat that once more time? You have 54 bottles of
bottled cider,
uniquely different ciders. 54.
Yes, ma'am.
We're talking 5-4. Cork and cage.
Yes.
In your new tasting room. This is a new tasting room as of like 6 months ago. We're recording now in February of 2025.
My bottle program is extensive, and it's really quite a challenge to manage it because I'm also an estate cidery. I do not source anything off of our farms.
Yeah.
So starting at early galas, I'm juicing. Matter of fact, this week I have a crew in there cleaning totes and things and cleaning up after. We just finished juicing from 2024's harvest. So with that comes...
You must have a huge apple
we have a big
storage
facility. Well, I moved into... This is where I live. I live in our apple packing facility. Capped Cider has started in a back closet, basically, of this building with free rent from my husband and family. And, we just kind of were an afterthought over there. And during harvest, when we had 100 people packing apples and the lines going and trucks coming in, we were cramped over in the corner with like a pallet jack and a hand thing, trying to get the cider out. And today we built a wall and they downsized the packing line, and I have over half of the building and the storage. And so one thing has led to another thing, and it is just seeming to be that I'm not really driving the bus. It is just naturally occurring, and I just keep exploring and keep doing things, and it's really incredible. But I started, like I said, in the back of the building, and I have my own fruit coolers. So at any one time, I'm juicing, and I'm storing juice in my coolers. And they're fruit coolers where you can store 13 bins high of fruit.
Yes.
It's a big warehouse environment.
Yes.
And the cooler runs 24 hours a day. So at any given time, you will see freshly pressed juice that I've fermented that is stored, that's waiting to be processed. You'll see finished stuff. You'll see bottles and kegs and trees I'm about to plant. So having that facility has really leveled the playing field for me to get a lot of things done, and it's really fun and interesting. So we're constantly moving that product around to be able to use it. Let's say if I've juiced cherries on site, I can't keep them forever. I have to move them to a freezer. And then I send a truck down and get it and defrost it, bring it back into the cidery. It's labor intensive to move it around. To be an estate company it's a big commitment, and it's a lot of labor. and, using whole ingredients, using only our peaches. I have to process them. I've got to store them in order to use that all year long.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of a Rubik's Square, just kind of the organizational. Do you do Excel sheets or what?
Yes, and we have to constantly inventory. And, my production staff has to know, because I'll say, I need tote 37 off of this, and they've got to go and move 30 things out of the way to even get it. Yes. And so we have to know where things are all the time.
Sure.
And so that's a challenge for sure. The bottle program is a challenge. In the winter, right now, I'm finishing off 14 new things, because I have fruit coming on that I planted years ago that I haven't worked with yet, and so I'm constantly doing that. So in the ciders, in the bottles, what I've done is I did a specialty line in a 375 ml bottle. It's smaller, more approachable. I do sell some of that, out in the commercial market when I can. They're focused on things that I feel like are special, or things that I've done a special finish to, like a Blanc Malay apple aged 2 years in stainless, then aged 6 months in pear brandy barrels, then bottled type of things.
Okay, pause. Let's talk about the pear brandy barrels.
Pear brandy.
And where are those barrels being sourced from?
Those are 10-year barrels from Peach Street Distilling, one of the main distillers in Colorado. I have my reserve line 750, where that line is my favorite apples that I grew in different parts of the orchard: Kingston Black, Dabinet, your standards, Harrison, and then I did a modern example in my reserve, which is a Panova apple that we grow. So I have those examples to the consumer to say, this is what a Colorado Dabinet tastes like. This is the highest elevation in Colorado. This is the best we can do in Colorado. This is the most unique terroir, oldest long-standing fruit grower, and this is Colorado's best example of and that's what I'm saying in my, whether it be true, but I'm saying that in my reserve line. So
sure. Who else can say that?
Right. And on the fronts of the bottles are hand-drawn illustrations from things on our farm and 100-year-old packing buildings and fun things like that.
Yeah.
And then I have a line that I just came out with last year called the Elevation series, and they are blends. And what I did was I went back into the orchards where I initially had planted 2 rows here and a little bit here and a little bit there, and decided, okay, now I'm going to blend fruit, and this is going to be a blended example. And I took fruit from culinary versions and blended them with cider apples that I had and crab apples in different ways for sweetness and different mouthfeel. And then in the Elevation series, there is a topography map of that exact elevation printed on the label.
Fun.
And the Elevation series are numbers 6642, 6350, 6, and so on and so forth. And there's 5 of those corresponding lot and block numbers to the specific apples in the blend and the style of each one. It's a little fun and geeky. So that's my Elevation series.
That's great for the consumer. It's also really great for you as a maker to be able to track that, to see what's hitting the palate for that particular consumer and yourself.
Yeah. I have single varietals in the last line that I have, which is my small batch line. That's fruit that have come on recently that I have smaller amounts of. And I don't distribute this. It just is going to be in my cider club. You can buy it online, or you have to show up at my tap room. And be ready to taste a lot of things, because we also have my wine in there. So, I represent Colorado wineries, so my tap room is Colorado only. Colorado wine and my cider. I do occasionally have guest ciders too, but I have so much cider in there, it's hard to even have a guest. I have 16 taps, 54 bottles. We have 28 red Colorado wines, 16 whites. It's a massive portfolio of things.
Yeah.
And it's just everything that I love.
I can feel it. I just want to give a little descriptor for folks out in Ciderville. As I'm looking at Kari, it's like she's buzzing. If there's a halo in the shape of an apple, it's surrounding her right now. I'm serious. I am serious. So let's get back to the cider making techniques that you use. You're using cultured yeast. Do you do any wild ferments or anything? A little bit of everything.
I've done so many things. One of my problems is that I have too many opportunities to make so many different ciders. I do botanicals where we press fresh ingredients, and we hand de-seed jalapenos, and we do all of those extra things. And it's meaningful to me. And as long as it is meaningful to me and it represents my company the same way that I would represent my family and the history, I'm able to do that. And I don't take the shortcuts that you could take. But I have botanicals. I do modern cider, dry and sweet. I have hopped cider. I have cider that is kind of high end in a can. I went out on the limb and said, okay, I'm going to put a blend of French and English cider apples in a can, and it's going to be a heritage sweet. And it's expensive.
Is that what we have?
Yeah, you have one.
Okay, all right. We see a
Gold Rush.
That's
a
Gold
blend,
Rush.
2 single varietals.
Yeah, and here's
Gold Rush is a sweeter version. I did make it sweeter purposely to be more approachable to the consumer. They possibly don't know what they've got there, but they know it tastes really well. I'm very into educating the consumer about what cider is and talking about cider apples, and doing that gives me a really good opportunity to talk to sales reps about it and to teach people about cider and say, hey, by the way, there's English bitter sharps and French bitter sweets, and there's heirlooms, and I have apples that Thomas Jefferson grew, and I have Foxwell. And it opens the door for me to talk about cider and the things that I'm so passionate about. It's apples. I have so much apple knowledge from my growing family that it's just kind of right there for me. And they've planted over 40 varietals of peaches over 100 years. They've had every apple that was potentially viable to them in my area. So I do use cultured yeast for some of the mainline stuff. I have went into co-fermentation. I have done wine ciders. I have done natural, completely spontaneous ferments, unfiltered, unfined. I have several in bottles now.
I could see you doing keep cider.
We are wanting to do keep cider. It's just my bottle program with the method that I have is so labor intensive. We are feeling like I've got to hire someone to help me to be able to do that. It just be specific to that, my bottle program, and help with the keeving. Keeving is on my list.
Okay, we'll put a dot on that.
I don't know about you, but I love keep cider.
Yeah.
And I mean,
my middle name is Keep.
Keep. I love it. Yeah, it's amazing.
Do you have a flagship cider? You know what I mean by that?
Yes, I do. Honeycrisp is the consumers, pick it up off the shelf.
Yeah, they're familiar with it. They know your brand. They trust it. That means a lot.
People like it. And I think the beginning cider drinker, is there.
Yeah.
But we've veered off into putting in single varietal Harrison, a single varietal extremely dry Kingston Black in a can. And, the market's changing. And
in what way? What do you say?
I think that the consumer is becoming a little more aware of cider flavor profiles and things, certainly since when we started.
I always get nervous asking that question because I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
I mean, Honeycrisp is not my favorite thing to make. It's beautiful crisp cider. It's a single varietal. I grow it, and it, like I said, it makes my family a zero waste company. When I use the excess fruit it literally comes right off their line. I have my own line that goes right into my juice bins. And I wouldn't not make it. I think there's a palate for that type of modern cider.
It's a great ice cider.
It's a great ice cider,
yeah.
And we have some dry ciders, some dry heirloom ciders that have been in my line that are really big pullers as well.
What would those be?
6130 dry, which is the elevation of our first farm there. It's always been a blend of heirloom apples. Back in 2017, we entered it into a competition, and it won best in class. And I think the standards for heirloom and the knowledge of apples have grown so much in the last years. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a different day now for heritage cider.
A wonderful time to be here. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And that cider now, isn't as wonderful as something I can do in the bottle. And I didn't have the fruit I have today when I first started. I had it in the ground, but not ready to bottle.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of different things. We've even done a yeast program that we cultured from the orchards, which was really interesting. I hired kind of a yeast person to kind of help me. And we cultured and it failed and cultured and failed, and then it wasn't that great. And then, we've had the usual problems with it. We've been able to use it in one thing so far, but it's...
Can you just give folks, they're probably bending their ear right now, yeast culture program, yeast person, which is such a cool title. Is this like putting a vat out in the orchard, or what is it?
So what he did was, that's what I would have thought it was. What he did was just took little scrapings of things. And
the skin of the apple? Mm-hmm. Did he take anything from the apple tree itself?
Apple tree and leaves. And we did several different things out in the orchard. Ground contamination around the bases. We've done different things like that. And he was a brewer and kind of a yeast, aficionado. And kind of helped us. And it was difficult and failed. And we couldn't get it to take off very well.
Failing in what way?
We couldn't get it to populate, really. We've never been able to replicate it or blow it up without having fresh yeast made. And I think, and I'm definitely not a fermentation scientist by any means, but it just wasn't stable enough for us to replicate it or to use it in any volume.
Consistency,
Yeah, I'm focused on managing that volume and figuring out the ratio of selling cider to accommodate that yield that's coming in. All that fruit from years ago is now cropping.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fruit and a lot of varietals. I don't know that there's a cider apple I don't have.
Well, that's a big claim there, Kari.
It's a big one. I don't know. There's not many.
Knows?
I mean, I have a lot of fruit, and I say it like it's a problem or something, but it's not. It's so exciting.
It's a good problem.
It's a really awesome problem.
Yeah.
But not every year do I have, because of biannual apples. Yeah. And then there's the factor of the weather and the conditions where we're growing. It's a very tumultuous growing environment. And luckily enough, with cider, with us having a later bloom time, we're still at risk for. Frost protection in our area is it's intense. And so...
Do you have fans?
We do.
Okay,
we have over 100 wind machines.
Wind machines that, just for folks listening, if you don't know, that actually helps keep the temperature...
Down into the orchard.
It drops it to the ground. And big, giant, massive...
fans
very
big.
Noisy, and you put them on. Anything else you do for that?
Yeah, so we have to do several different systematic approaches, and obviously the family over this amount of time. Most years, every grower in our area, there's growers that are froze out. They don't make it as long. The only thing that saves us today is we have a workforce that can help us do that. And so if my husband decides to pull a wind machine out of the ground during spring frost and move it to a block of Honeycrisps to save them, they will do it. And it's very intense. So we have propane, because obviously propane is stubbed for our wind machines. Yeah. We have it stubbed around in our orchard like a heating system. Okay. That you can go if it's necessary and put a pot heater and turn it on. And you've got propane heat.
Heat popping up. It's
popping up.
Built into the ground?
Yes. So it's like having a heater in the orchard.
Yeah, which is a crazy thing. But when this is
this is our livelihood.
The way of the farmer. Yeah,
and
you got to do it.
So when that becomes necessary, we're talking about 38,000 gallons of propane a day.
Jeez.
To frost protect.
Yeah.
It's intense. And so...
But you would lose...
Millions of dollars.
You could lose
yeah. And so it's very intense. We're pruning, and our crews are working all winter. Snow, the only time they're not pruning in the winter is if the weather is so bad and it gets below zero and they cannot do it. All of that wood that we're pruning is stacked in an organized way around different sections of the orchard in preparation for spring frost.
For the frost.
So when spring comes along, they go out all day long and get everything ready, test wind machines. Everybody's on the ready, 10 p.m. or whatever time that my husband tells them to come, they all show up. And depending on the weather and what the situation is and how far we are into the spring bloom process, different methods are used. And so there's a combination of open fire every 10 feet, in addition to the propane heating. Wind machines are blowing. Yeah. Sometimes they use cold air drains, where they put up a block where the air... Now, I'm not an expert on this.
That's okay. I'm with you.
It's something like this. So let's say you build a wall, and you're in a certain topography where you have a hole or a pocket
that's going to drop
down. Yep. And you're going to blow the air and light a fire to kind of bring the air back over into the pocket where it warms. And my husband and my sons can raise the temperature of the orchard like 10, 15 degrees. They'll work all through the night, restocking, burning,
Fantastic.
running, and then they will come home in the morning when they are finished, They will sleep and they come back out for the rest of the day. They load our semis with wood from other orchard locations if we're burning out. And we're on a week here every night, working all through the day and all through the night. We restock the wood and we go out again. We're frost protection warriors. There's fires. There's smudge stuff. There's stuff going on. It looks like Game of Thrones.
I want a T-shirt.
Yeah,
frost protection warrior.
It looks like Game of Thrones or something happening.
I love it.
And they come in, they sleep for a few hours, and they go out. And when frost protection, we are in that area.
Yeah.
No one from the family is in Texas. We are
Everybody's
focused.
all hands on deck. Shall we try one of these ciders?
Sure, let's do it. Gold Rush is a canned cider, and it has won 3 Best in Classes consecutively. It's a heritage sweet. It's a blend of French and English cider apples blended together for the sweetness. It is not sweetened, which you would think it was, but I have not sweetened it.
It's no back sweetening?
Nope.
Okay, so it says 8.2% ABV.
And that's the other thing that comes from our elevation.
This is a cultured yeast, of course.
Yes.
And it's called Gold Rush. It's not the Gold Rush apple.
No.
But it's Gold Rush to play on the theme of
Colorado
the
Gold Rush.
It's a beautiful presentation on the can. It has the Capped Cider logo on it, which is mountaintops with some evergreen trees, and then the name Capped Cider Company. That says Colorado proudly, and then Gold Rush in a nice italicized font. And on the top of the can it says heirloom apples grown at 6,130 feet. It does have a little scale on the side, a dry to sweet scale, and this is kind of leaning towards the sweeter side, but not fully in there. As Kari said, it wasn't back sweetened at all. Cheers.
Cheers.
What are we getting here on the flavor profile?
You're getting a lot of the bitter sharps and the richness. I blend into this richness in the palate.
Yeah, you do.
I
You
blend
get it right
into
there.
golden russet. Right there in the mid palate. And then I do put in a little bit of Blanc Mollet and a couple of French bitter sweets.
Yeah, you got that right there.
That's where you get that nice little tingle and flavor complexity. This cider, you'll notice, is 8.2%. Capped Cider's never made an imperial cider, and I probably never would do that. And this is why. Growing at this elevation where it intensifies the sugar content, we're getting 21 to 25 bricks of sugar, high acid, and all this tannin from the UV exposure.
Right.
And so I naturally have high ABV when I blend cider apples without doing anything.
Yeah.
So I've just stayed away from the trend of imperial ciders because I have imperial ciders without trying.
Very full mouth complexity there, and it's in a can, which is a little deceptive in one way for a drinker because you want to pause. You want to pause and go, wait
This
a
is
minute.
beautiful in a wine glass.
Oh,
Of course, I
can see
only
that.
drink
Yeah,
cider in
Yeah.
really
I mean,
nice
I love
wine
that it's
glasses.
in a can for
Yeah, I love it too.
traveling and all that. That's great, but it's not like, quaff and eat back really quick, although I probably would too, but, for the most part, I'm going to pause and go, wait a minute,
Yeah,
what's
it's a more
going on here?
complex cider than you would get in a can normally.
And not like heavy carbonation at all, so it's just enough to make it
To
pop
deliver it into
that you want to. The acid's well balanced in there. I'm going to take another little sip, pop, 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 pop in my mouth, and it's going to kind of keep on showing itself. You could drink it cold, and I imagine as it warms up a little bit more, your flavors
It does.
will come. Yeah,
The aroma is absolutely stunning on it.
a little bit of oxygen will really help. It has stabinette, and that is not forcing itself out of the crowd here, which is nice. So you really balance that.
It really is about blending. And I think presenting a cider like this to the consumer, it's approachable even for the beginning cider drinker. And interestingly enough, it was a highly awarded cider. It's won like 9 or 10 golds and double golds and platinums and best in classes and things. But it's approachable to even the beginning cider drinker, but complicated enough to keep them interested in it. It's really fun to be able to put a cider like that in a can. When I first, of course, brought it out, and it wasn't a big seller. They don't know what it is, and it's very high ABV. So it's like, for some cider,
You're getting the tannins in here, which gives you the big mouthfeel, right? So it's kind of rounded out the whole blend. And then we have just enough astringency there, too, to give us a little bit of the bitters, but not overwhelming at all.
A sweetness,
It's
to smooth it down.
And when Kari's saying sweet, it's not cloyingly sweet whatsoever.
I want a complex mouthfeel. I think blending is so important, and I think as an industry, we all have some work to do in that area to learn how to blend apples. Before I make a cider, I want to taste right out of the orchard, and I suck the juice out of the fruit, and I think of it, and I taste it, and I start understanding what I'm going to do with it right there. And I come back and taste it again, and then I juice it, and all three of those stages, I decide what yeast I'm using and what style and how it's going to be finished from there. And I want to taste it as soon as the ferment's slowing down and throughout the ferment, and then I go in and do that, and I literally write the tasting notes right there. I'm done. I already know I'm finishing it, and we're gonna do that. And I will adjust and come in and have my bottling team ready to bottle a sparkling cider or something else that's just under. And I will say, no, shut everything down, take it all back, and I want more saturation for 3 more days. Not so many bubbles, but I want it more saturated. And I will adjust it because carbonation, I think it's all in the finishing. Especially in bottled cider, I think it's all in the finishing.
You have it here. I'm not seeing any bubbles coming up at all, but each sip, the carbonation's just right on the edge to make it pop just enough.
Just to lift it through the palate.
Well done.
We do that a lot, and in our can line we adjust, which is a really big pain in the neck for everyone because I'm, but I do change the carbonation levels in the cans due to the blend. And the way it's supposed to be presented, especially in the bottles. And in my tasting notes, as we're making like this right now, we're making lots of new things in and everyone kind of knows what the roughed out details are on the tank because I've already written all my notes of what's happening there and what to call me and check, and I come taste it along the way. But I think it's all in the finishing. Blending first and finishing, and not to be afraid of tweaking those little minor details because sugar and carbonation, especially in the finish, can change the dynamic of your flavor profile and move something through your palate that you would not agree with if it was flat. And just a tiny bit of carbonation can change your interpretation of cider, I think. That's just my opinion, but
I agree with you 100%, and you obviously have the product to show it.
I love lighter cider. I love acid-based ciders. I love botanical ciders. I love a lot of different styles of cider. But this is my thing. So I was really excited to put cider apples in a can. I don't know where it'll go. We are putting it out in some of our other distribution, and, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfect time to be doing that.
Yeah, why not?
How do people get your ciders? They do the cider club.
So we just launched a cider club. I was under the impression all this time that I couldn't have a cider club until I have a gazillion million 10-year aged ciders in my cooler, which I do.
Yeah.
And I have all these bottles and things. And so...
you have all people worried about that. I know, right?
So. I was like, I got to have 1 million bottles of...
You're really setting the bar here, folks. Okay.
I got to have 1 million bottles of Grauenstein and whatever. We obviously sell on Vino Shipper online, cans and a few bottles. And then we have our cider club, which you'll get a blend of my Elevation series, my highest awarded ciders. You'll get my reserve line. You'll get single varietals, something new that I'm working on. Like this year I'm doing some French ciders. And, of course, our first shipment will have a really fun surprise of a French cider that I've just finished that maybe isn't anywhere else. There's all my small batch line you can only get in my cider club. And I don't offer it on Vino Shipper or in my tap room. Okay. And so, not because I don't have a lot of it, but because it's just an easier way for me to distribute it that way and make it more exclusive, and it's super fun. We are distributed throughout Colorado, obviously. We are in Utah, we are in Idaho, and we are in California.
But you are at a destination location.
Oh, gosh, yes.
You really are. And I noticed, I want to just make a note that it says Orchard City, where your family must have claimed that name for that location. Is that true?
No, they didn't. Back in the day,
it's a cool name.
It is. Back in the day when the Service Creek Valley was such a proliferous fruit growing belt with all those large orchards and whatnot, we had 5 juicing plants, packing companies. That fruit needed to be moved out of that valley. As a matter of fact, then my family froze water on the Grand Mesa and brought it down and put the ice blocks in the rail cars, hand wrapped the apples, made the wooden boxes on site, and loaded rail cars to ship our fruit out of the valley. It's a labor of love.
Yeah, it is a labor of love.
But
Beautiful.
Orchard City was where one of the major packing buildings was, and I don't know exactly why they called it that. I think it's because there was orchards clear from where you would be familiar with where my tap room is, clear to the highway going into Delta.
Okay, yeah.
And our fruit packing facility and where I make cider is in Orchard City, and it's on Fruit Growers Road. so, I mean,
I love it.
Couldn't be more authentic than that.
It couldn't be.
It sounds so cheesy, but it really is the truth, and it's so fun to share my family's story and to present cider in a way that I can, and have that luxury of time, and have fruit at my disposal, and to be able to represent what my family's done for so long and growing at the elevation that they have. It's no joke. It's hard work to get fruit from there. And like I said, we're in the high risk, high reward, and the fruit that comes from the valley is just so amazing that the apples is why my family's relevant in their commercial markets today.
I'm just kind of seeing greatness going down the road here now with your new tasting room and everything and the variety that you have. I'm going to really encourage listeners to keep your eye out for Snowcap and seek it out, because what a wonderful way to spend a vacation going there to that region. There's lots of places to go camping or stay at places and just to see the desert or go to Moab.
The wines. I mean, Palisades is known for such great wine.
Yeah.
It's such a nice tour to go up through and clear into Hotchkiss. I think it's a great... and we are starting to get a lot of attention for tourism.
I'd like to ask what your husband's name is.
My husband's name is Ty.
Ty.
And I jokingly call him my grower. And he owns Capped Cider with me. Ty and I together are just a fabulous cider team. He's a fourth-generation fruit grower, and he manages over 800 acres of the farms and helps with my cider fruit. He makes sure all my fruit is coming in, and he manages my juicing program. So I don't have to go and say, which apples are we juicing today, and have my juice crew waiting for me to do it. My husband does that for me, and that's his part of the business. He also is very interesting in this aspect because, he's grown in this elevation for over 40 years, and he's very knowledgeable about fruit, and we have kids, went to school for ag degrees and things like that. We're agricultural family. And he's able to say, Kari, I have galas coming in. You're probably going to want to add acid to them because this is how much water and how much heat and how many days and all these things.
Bonus.
He's an apple scientist, and so it's coming to me. I don't always listen to him. But, we don't always do it, but, it's just a really great place to be if you're a cider maker,
Really awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story and spending time with us today on Cider Chat. It's been absolutely amazing meeting you in person.
You as well.
And able to taste this cider. It's really exciting. And I'm excited for the future.
Thank you. I am too.
At ciderchat.com, you'll find the show notes for this here episode 457 with Kari Williams of Capped Cider, based in Cedar Ridge, Colorado. You also find links to the upcoming events at Stone Ridge Orchard on May 2nd and 3rd. That's the Balkan Wall Sale. And on May 10th, you have the annual Broom Farm Blossom Walk at the Ross on Wye Cider and Perry Company. And on May 11th, in Portland, Maine, it's Cider Feast. Find all that and a whole bunch more at ciderchat.com. And with that, I leave you here. This is Real Wind Color, signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
Bitter sharp, strange apples, juicy ripe. Bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dum, bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dum. Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples,
Bittersweet, strange apples hanging high. Got them strange apples. Forget the pie. Strange apples. Squeeze them tight. Got them strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, 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 ba-dum-doo-dee-da, pop, 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 ba-dum-doo-dee-da.
Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples.
Come and see. Plenty strange apples for you and me. Strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples.
Make them pop. Pop, pop, pop.
Ba-da-doo-doo-da.
Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-dee-da. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-dee-da. Pop, pop, pop. Pop, 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 pop.
Yeehaw!